right. Oops. There we go. Now we can actually see my whole head. And today, guys, it's going to be a little bit of a different type of podcast, but one that honestly is going to be equally as important as what we talk about so much more often on the show. We're going to be talking about a little bit about the trip I took this past weekend to go visit some family and just some important things that I took away from that. And the reason we're going to be talking about this is because it's very easy to get caught up in your day-to-day. It's very easy to get caught up in, the grind of running a business or the grind of building your career as an athlete. Like, it's very easy to get caught up in these things. But one thing we often forget is why we're doing it in the first place. And that is something that we're going to talk a little bit about today, because this past weekend, I got back to Ottawa for the first time in over a year. I got to visit with my little 2-year-old niece, who is just a hilarious ball of energy. And it was so nice and just so much fun. And it was the first time in a long time where I didn't take time off, because I still worked while I was there, but I shifted my priorities a little bit within that trip. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. And if you are on the Instagram stream, stick around after, and we'll do a few minutes of Q&A as well. I appreciate that. It was an awesome time. It was, got a lot out of it. So I'm excited to talk about this today. So guys, we're going to get right into the show. If you're on the Instagram stream, stick around. We will do a little bit of Q&A right at the end. But we're talking about what is truly important in life. And we are going to get going in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the #1 show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we're talking about what's truly important in life. Now, what we're talking about today and why I'm bringing this one to you is because this past weekend I got back to Ottawa for the first time in well over a year. And I got to see my little 2-year-old niece, Maddie, and it was just so much fun. But it really reinforced a lot of different things in me that I feel like need to be talked about more. We talk about, on this show, we talk a lot about training. We talk a lot about the mindset around training. We talk a lot about, how to improve your chances to succeed as an athlete. But one thing that I feel like we don't talk about enough is, the other things that are important in life. Because what really, I'm going to go through a few different things that this visit really reinforced in my mind, and hopefully they resonate with you as well. So the first thing is, spending time with this kid really made me reinforce with myself to be grateful for the little things in life. Here I am running a pretty large business at this point, working with professional athletes, doing this really cool stuff and things that I've wanted to forever. And this kid isn't, looking at me being like, oh, that's my awesome uncle that trains professional athletes. This kid just sees Uncle Nenny, the guy who flies down the slide with her and pushes her on the swings and goes swimming with her. And it just really reinforced that it's obviously it's important to push for the goals that you have in your career. It's important to push yourself. It's important to grow as a person, all of these things that we talk about so often on this show. But it's also important to just live in the moment. I think so much about the future. I think so much about what I want life 5 years from now to look like, life 10 years from now to look like, and all of that. But seeing the joy on this little 2-year-old kid's face just to be in the room with me was really an important lesson in just living in the moment, just, putting all of that stuff aside for a minute and just hanging out with this little kid that was just overjoyed to show me her toys and go to the park and go for a swim at the pool. And it was a really cool experience because it's been a long time since I really realized that I really just sat in the moment like that. And so that's the first thing that I wanted to really reinforce, is that as much as, it's very important to think about your career. It's very important to think about, new levels for yourself, what you're working towards, why you're working towards it. But it's also very important to not miss those little memories, not miss those little things that are happening in the day-to-day. And so, like, as an example, there's a pool 5 minutes down the road, indoor pool because it's cold outside, but there's a pool 5 minutes down the road from my parents' house. And my mom came to me and said, "Hey, we're taking Maddie to the pool. Do you need to get some work done, or do you want to come with us?" And immediately, without a thought, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to the pool. This is going to be hilarious and so much fun knowing this kid." And I had a bunch of things that I needed to get done, but I reorganized the day so that I could put all that stuff aside, go to the pool, and just enjoy being with this little kid, because she's not going to be 2 years old forever. She's not going to be excited about going to the pool forever. So I want to take advantage of being able to be part of those memories when I can. Now, the other thing that it really reinforced with me was, within that being in the present, within that, being in the moment, I think there's a very big difference. Like, there are a lot of parents out there and a lot of people out there that think physically being in the room means that, you're present and you're always around, so you're doing the right things. But there's a very big difference between physically being in the room and mentally being in the room. It would have been very easy while I was at the pool. It would have been very easy while I was, at the park with my niece doing all these things to be thinking about, the athletes that I have and the work I have to do and blah, 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 and kind of just be in and out. But what I was really able to do, and what really, made the weekend so special, is for the time that I was with her, nothing else was on my mind. I wasn't thinking about I wasn't thinking about, my athletes. I wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't thinking about that stuff. I put all that aside and just focused on this kid who was just overjoyed to be spending time with me, and just being overjoyed to spend time with her too. And making sure that you're mentally in the room and not just physically in the room with memories like that, I think, is just massively important. Now, the second thing that it really reinforced with me is things like this is why you have to show up at your best every day. I work a lot and I work very, very hard. And a lot of the time, that means a lot of sacrifice. That means not being able to be there all the time and see Maddie, my niece, all the time like that. But the hard work that I've done and the sacrifices that I've made and the time that I've put in and the money that I've put into learning how to grow a business, learning how to coach better, all of these things has put me in a financial position where I have a team that works for me. So when I'm away for the weekend, my business is still moving forward, even if I'm not working every minute of the time that I'm gone. So because of the work that I'm doing, and I don't feel like I've, quote unquote, made it by any stretch, but because of the work that I'm doing, I'm now in a position that when I do go visit my niece, I can literally put things aside and just spend time with her, and my business won't suffer. And this is something that I think a lot of people need to understand as well. It's great to be in the moment, but if you're half-assing your whole life, you're never out of that position where you have to be stressed out. I knew that I could go away for 4 days. I could put work on the back burner when I needed to, and I could just spend time soaking in this adorable little kid that I haven't seen in months. And I'm in that position because of the way that I show up in my day-to-day life. And this was the next thing that really reinforced with me, is for that reason, and for others that I'm going to speak about right now, you need to show up at your best. If you have a goal to be a world champion athlete, show up at your best in order to put yourself in the best position to accomplish that goal, not just for yourself, but also for your future. Your kids in the future, your family in the future, friends in the future, other business opportunities in the future. If you show up at your best now, that means a lot of sacrifice. That means a lot of saying no. That means doing a lot of things that other people aren't willing to do. But what that leads to down the road is that leads to open doors. That leads to better business opportunities. That leads to more money. That leads to being able to retire and actually not have to work another job after your career, which in turn leads to so much more freedom for so much more of your life. So showing up at your best now creates the life you want down the road. Now, the other part of that as well is not only was I free to go to Ottawa to, spend those 4 days hanging out with her, seeing family and friends and all of that. But I was also able to do it and not worry about, spending the $25 to be able to go into the pool for the day and spend the day with my niece, and doing those little things as well because of the way I show up on a day-to-day basis. So learning how to show up at your best, learning how to be the best that you can be on a day-to-day basis is not only going to allow you more freedom down the road to be able to do more of the things that you want to do with your life, but it's also going to allow you the financial freedom to be able to do those things without having to constantly worry about every dollar that's in the bank. Like, I have a lot of athletes right now that they've told me, they're like, the training you offer and the things you do, like, this is exactly what I need in my career, but I just can't afford it right now. And there are some cases where, yeah, you might really not be able to afford it, but there are other cases where, it's expensive, and, but those same people that'll tell me that training's too expensive are also the same people that stop at Starbucks every day on the way to work and buy a $4 or $5 coffee. They're the same people that are eating out a couple times a week because, they don't go through the time to actually pack their lunches. They're the same people that aren't budgeting their finances in other areas, and as a result, don't have the money to invest in themselves and invest in their future. But if you look at it this way, think about it like this. The money that you're investing now to better your career and better your future is going to put you in a better position to succeed. Now, if you invested the money that you need into a coach, into a strength coach, nutritionist, whatever other area it might be, and that helped you not gas out in your next 3 fights, and now you're on a winning streak, and then instead of being on a losing streak, you're on a winning streak, and as you're on a winning streak, you start getting picked up by bigger organizations that pay you more money. Now, is it worth the investment? Right? And this was the thing for me with my business coaching. I signed up with a business coach 18 months ago, and it was almost every dime that I had in the bank. And that was a very difficult investment to make, but investing in that business coach allowed me to build better systems in my business, allowed me to make more money, allowed me to put myself in a position where I can succeed and I can be free to take these trips, to have these experiences that just 3 or 4 years ago, there's no way I could have had. Right? So at the time, that was a very difficult decision to make. It was a lot of money that I didn't really have. But now, because I made that investment, because I got uncomfortable, because I believed in the results that I knew I could achieve with the right team around me, I'm living a way better life. And now making that same investment today wouldn't even be a second thought. And the final part of, why this trip and why this little kid reminded me to continue to show up at the best level that I possibly can is to be an example. And I'm not saying anything about, any other adult in her life or any other, adult in any other kid's life. But what I want to be able to be is when she starts to really see the world around her, when she starts to really understand, how the world works and all of those things, I want to be a person in her life that shows her that anything's possible. And I feel like that's all we want for the next generation of our family. To be the person in their life that shows them whatever you want to do, you can do it as long as you're willing to put in the work, and as long as you're willing to put in the time, and as long as you're willing to do what is necessary to accomplish that goal. So when this kid is 10, 12, 15 years old, I want her looking at me, not necessarily thinking, oh, I want to do what he does, but I want her looking at me and thinking, like, wow, look what he's doing for a living. And if my uncle can do that for a living, well, then there's no reason I can't do anything that I want to do with my life too. And having an example like that, I believe, is priceless. And instead of, sitting around and waiting for someone else to be that example, becoming that example yourself shows those kids, shows that next generation what they can accomplish. And you're not just sitting around on the sideline trying to tell them, hey, you can be anything you want. I think one of the most powerful things that I've ever heard, it was one of my business coaches, actually, Dusseault, and he said, I'm trying to remember the exact wording, I might butcher it a little bit, but he basically said, he was like, so many people love to tell kids that, they can do anything they want, but they're telling them that from the position of someone who gave up on their dream. So it's like if you're working some shitty 9 to 5 that you don't like, that wasn't your actual goal when you were growing up, and you're telling your niece, your nephew, your son, your daughter, whoever it might be, you can be anything you want to be. And then they're looking at you and they're like, well, if I can be anything I want to be, what the hell happened to you? Right? And I don't want to be that person. And I want to be that person that when I look at that kid and I say, hey, you can be anything you want to be, they look and they see what I'm doing and they understand that that's actually reality and that is actually possible for them. So that was one of the other big things, is showing up at your best, making sure that you're actually, you're actually setting a proper example for that next generation. But to basically sum up what we're talking about here, I was in Ottawa for 4 days and I spent 3 of those with my little 2-year-old niece. And the things that I really got out of it were, yes, she's just a lot of fun. And it was just so nice to be able to be around for that time. But the other pieces that I really got out of it were just reinforcing, what's actually important in life. It's great to train hard. It's great to push towards a goal, push towards a dream. But you also don't want to overlook the good things that happen right in front of you every single day. And for me, the good things that were happening right in front of me every single day are this kid growing up. And I know that I live across the country. I'm not going to be able to be there for everything. But when I am there, being able to put work aside, being able to put other things aside, and really being able to just focus on being the best uncle that I can be, and focus on giving that kid the best weekend that I can give her. And so basically, guys, I hope you got a little something out of this. I hope it shifted your perspective a little bit and just really helped you reinforce the fact that, the grind is important, the sport is important, the career is important, the goals are important, but life is happening every single day. And every once in a while, you need to stop and smell the roses. Every once in a while, you need to, appreciate the things that are already in front of you instead of just focusing on the future. So I appreciate you all for taking the time to tune in today. This is truly one of my favorite things to do during my week. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your Thursday, and I will catch you on the next episode. All right, Instagram. We're going to stick around for a minute, do a little bit of Q&A. If you've got any